State Department. He has been in the political field over 25 years. He is also the policy maker for several countries in the Middle East, including Egypt, Syria, Israel, Palestine, Jordan, including Lebanon. And without any further, I would like you to welcome Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Saeed, very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today with all of you, with the Syrian American Council. It's also a pleasure to be here and participate in what you're calling Freedom for Syria Day. For many years, I hoped that I could participate in such an event, and I'm really pleased that finally that day has come. Saeed was very generous in his remarks, and he explained to you my responsibilities in the State Department. What I can tell you is I've been in this job now as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for 1 year. And in the year that I've had this job, I've had many meetings with Lebanese American groups. I've met with many Palestinian American groups. Of course, I've met with many Jewish American groups. And I've even met with Egyptian American groups. But this is the first meeting I've had with the Syrian American group. Well, I think it's about time that we've done this. And I'm glad to be here to do this. It's time for me to be meeting with the Syrian American group. And I think it's also time for you to be organizing your community in this way. I'm very pleased that the Syrian Americans, that all of you have come together here in Washington to express your views to your government. And I'm pleased as well that your government, meaning me, is here today to listen to you and to understand your point of view. What's brought us together today, of course, are the recent events in Syria. What's happening in Syria is the same thing that has been happening throughout the Arab world this spring. Ordinary people are demanding the right to participate in decisions to shape their future. We take this right for granted here in the United States, but for too long, this right has been denied to Egyptians, Tunisians, Libyans, and of course, the Syrians. Unfortunately, the Syrian government has chosen to respond to the calls for freedom and democracy from its people with bullets and with beatings and with arrests. This is not what the great Syrian people deserve, the people with a long and distinguished history and culture. The Syrian people deserve the same freedom that we enjoy here, and that people across the Middle East are beginning to enjoy now as we speak. Here in the United States, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, states a profound truth. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This is a universal truth, and just as the rights outlined in this document are universal rights. In Syria, unfortunately, the government does not seem to understand this. By denying its people their right to assembly and to free speech, the Syrian government is losing its legitimacy before the Syrian people. We have been clear about what the Syrian government must do. As President Obama outlined in his speech last Thursday, the Syrian government must stop shooting demonstrators and allow peaceful protests. It must release political prisoners and stop the unjust arrests. It must allow human rights monitors to have access to cities like Daraa, and it must start a serious dialogue with its people to advance a democratic transition. Otherwise, as President Obama warned, President Assad and his regime will continue to be challenged from within and isolated abroad. And when the Syrian government has ignored these calls, not just from the U.S., but across the international community, we have responded. President Obama has signed 2 executive orders imposing sanctions on individuals and entities committing human rights violations in Syria. These orders include President Bashar al-Assad, senior officials of the Syrian government, and the leaders of the internal security forces and the military. We have also sanctioned Iranian organizations, such as the Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, for the role that they have played in assisting the Syrian government's repression. In signing these executive orders, President Obama took a decisive step to increase pressure on the government of Syria to end its use of violence and to begin transitioning to a democratic system that ensures the universal rights of the Syrian people are respected. These new orders provide the United States with additional It is the regime that foments violence by meeting peaceful protests with deadly force and mass arrests. The Syrian government's violent repression and blatant disregard for the human rights of its own citizens only serves to stir up new violence.